All right, welcome everybody to Channel Juice Thursdays. We are now on the fourth episode actually, so time is flying by with this quarantine. And this is gonna be one of my favorite episodes to date. We're actually very lucky in Southern California and Hawaii, Las Vegas. We have two of the best channel engineers in the company helping us out in this market. We have both Yvonne Lebanon and Rick Perkins. And on today's call, today's Zoomcast, Yvonne is going to be presenting. Sorry, what was that? Someone have a question? Okay. So Yvonne's going to be presenting today, and it's on shifting focus to business level outcomes with autonomous infrastructure. I think this is something that no matter what vertical we're calling into, this is what business leaders want to hear about. This is really how we create the larger size deals, is when we're helping companies really change and transform their business and getting all people thinking further up the relevancy chain. And so in order to do that, some of the tasks that were traditionally focused on by IT need to become automated or autonomous. And so, yeah, really looking forward to this talk today from Yvonne. Did want to give you guys a teaser for next week. So next week's going to be on continuity, cost reduction, and critical capabilities with empowering the remote workforce. So that'll be next week's episode. And then as a reminder, please stay tuned afterwards. I'm going to be sending out bonus questions. And the first person to get those 3 bonus questions right will get a Dell Technologies North Face backpack. So I've successfully shipped out 3 of them so far. And one actually went all the way to Hawaii, is en route to Hawaii right now. So no matter where people get those questions right, the backpack will be going out. And besides that, I think we're good. And I'm going to kick this over to Yvonne. Yvonne, go ahead, introduce yourself, and then let's rock and roll.
Thank you, Buck. So my name is Ivan Levendian, partner systems engineer here in Los Angeles. And for today's Channel Juice session, Buck actually got me some best practices, and he told me basically that I have to triple the amount of slides that I do in comparison to the face-to-face presentation. So I have about 66 slides for you. No, I'm kidding. I have actually just a few slides, and some of them I created specifically for this session, like this one. I hope you guys can see my screen and I can check my my bingo quadrant. All right. So I wanted to start with probably the most visible argument on why automation is relevant to the industry and to your customers. Why IT being autonomous is relevant. So one of these most visible arguments is user errors. And I like to get feedback from the industry by going to social media. And for today's session, I went and collected those quotes that you see on the screen, what user error could mean for business. Besides, there are many reasons why customers are looking to automate their IT infrastructure. Cost savings, productivity, better service quality, which we'll talk about soon. But when you hear things like, GitLab accidentally deleted their production data, and when they tried to restore the data, they used 5 different backup approaches, including cloud backup, and none worked. So it makes you wonder, like what user error could really mean for the business. That's really a big one that you see on the news, right? Okay, so, and this is what Gartner has to say. So I went ahead and I opened Gartner blog, and that's one of their blog posts from February, which gets you access to the stuff that you have to buy otherwise. So you can see that though automation has just recently started to gain momentum, successful deployments of automated IT environments, they have already decreased the costs by 30%. And the service quality is increased by 30%. So that's big, right? So that's why your customers care. You can clearly see that instead of things like hiring more sysadmins to keep things running, your customers will be focusing or investing in people who can bring innovation and bring more revenue to the business, especially now, right? Especially in these times. So from the infrastructure side, the idea of IT infrastructure that can do things like deploy itself, provision itself, and even repair itself, it's something that has been around for quite some time. It was discussed for a long time actually in the industry, but only recently true automated environments started to appear. And before that happened, actually, we came up with things like VxRail, right? So VxRail is one of those things that does a good job with automation, because you don't have to manage your environment as you would do with the traditional 3-tier SAN or do-it-yourself approach with things like vSAN ready nodes. So VxRail tries to automate a lot of manual tasks, and you guys probably, everyone saw it in action at some point of your career. So it auto configures itself in like 10 minutes. So your customer doesn't have to do hundreds of manual steps. Lifecycle management is automated. So if you use Dell networking OS 10, even your network lifecycle is automated as well. And as you can see on the screen, that's, to me, it sounds like one of the biggest selling points. It's sustained as a single product. So only one tier to manage, only one tier to support, and by installing the upgrades, you just go from one good state to another, right? So it's guaranteed to work, no bad configurations here. So VxRail was definitely a step forward towards that, and that's why by itself is a $2 billion business, and it's still growing triple digits, by the way. But VxRail is not a true autonomous infrastructure in a way that you still have to make decisions yourself as an admin. You have to size it properly. You have to understand how much storage to allocate, so, size it for performance, what erasure coding to use. So you have to make manual decisions, right? So it's still managed by a human. And if you look at the market, there are many solutions that claim to be autonomous, but true autonomous infrastructure has built-in intelligence engine that can deliver ready-to-run resources on demand, and that happens by itself. You don't even open the UI, it's managed by itself. So it's important to understand the difference between the marketing claims and the actual autonomous technology. And which leads me to this approach that we in Dell Technologies created, which I think is one of the most interesting things that came out after the merger, after the acquisition of EMC by Dell. So the main idea behind this solution called Power1 was to take the concept of the data center and bring the level of data center complexity to the level of consumer electronics. So I have recently installed smart lights in my house, and I bought it off Amazon. It connects directly to my Wi-Fi router. So I have a simple automation set up. So when it's darker outside, the lights turn on automatically, but it also gets the time, right? So it changes its color temperature depending on the time. So I set an outcome. I want my room to be lighted appropriately, right? And the system figures everything by itself. So I'm sure if it's a good analogy, but all the complexity that is in your data center with this solution, it's bring to pretty much the same level as my smart lights. So we know that in data center, the unit of consumption is compute, networking, and storage. So went ahead and create this concept of CRG, Cluster Resource Group. And the idea behind Cluster Resource Group is to bring those complex and specialized physical resources together as a single consumable entity for the customer. Okay, so that's really what the solution is about. So we try to bring the complex physical infrastructure, we try to virtualize it and present it to the customer as a very simple, consumable, logical entity. And I don't want to go into what's inside Power1. It doesn't really matter. So normally at this point, I will show a hardware slide and talk about things like what's inside, what storage array, how many IOPS. But in this case, it's not the point. So I only have this very high level slide. And guess what? We took the best hardware we could get our hands on, because this is an enterprise level product. Initially, it will sold to higher end customers. But in evolution of this product, is going to expand to the whole IT environment, right? To the whole spectrum of customers. So right now we have PowerMax 2000 to 8000 storage. We're going to add mid-range next once it's released. You have PowerEdge Compute, MX series. You have PowerSwitch networking. You have PowerProtect for data protection, and you have VMware for virtualization. So the good thing about all this is one cloud platform, all from a single vendor, Dell Technologies. Okay, so we have control of the supply chain. We know how to do it better than anyone. Now, let's go back to the main principles of Power1. So in many ways, you can consider the entire Power1 box as a private cloud. But those cluster resource group is how we divide those physical resources inside that box from the previous slide. So we take them and we divide those physical resources into consumable groups in those cluster resource groups. And that's how we fire up the logical infrastructure that we present to the customers. And the key component here, and that's the engine behind Power1 being autonomous, is the actual Power1 controller. Power1 controller is a management plane. And it's declarative, and it's driven by the APIs. So I wanted to briefly make a stop here and expand on what does it mean being declarative. Originally, it's a software development term, and a good example of declarative language is SQL. So for SQL, you just tell it what data from the database you need to get, and it gets your result. So the key thing here is what you need. You don't care how the data is extracted or what steps should be done. You just tell it what you want. So exactly the same idea here. You tell Power1 controller, I want to have an infrastructure for my application to run. It needs that much storage, that much performance, and I need to be able to recover the data from like 15 minutes ago. And I want a copy in my other data center. And this Power1 controller will look at what physical resources it has, and it will look up the best practices for them, and it will by itself create a cluster resource group out of those physical components just for this application that you have in mind. And there are many ways how you can tell the controller to do this, one of which is the UI, so you can physically go to the UI and do it as a human. But the UI that you will see in my demos just pulls the management controller API. And it's there for organizations that are simply not that far enough in their IT transformation journey. So the ultimate goal of this whole thing is not people telling Power1 what to do, not people driving the IT, it's rather IT driving the IT. So you can connect Power1 to the ticket management system, such as ServiceNow, for example. And if a director wants his whole BU to work from home, he would go to, say, ServiceNow, submit a ticket, and the system itself will talk to Power1, it will talk to VMware, and your VDIs will get provision to the entire business unit. So now people can work from home. All that in like 10 minutes without even involving the IT guys, right? So that's the whole definition of being autonomous, to associate those physical components, get them together, and get to the customer outcome intelligently without human interaction. So the key thing here is we're not actually automating the individual components to get like a faster way to configure this component. We're not delivering, faster screwdriver. We just how we understand what's the customer outcome, what's the customer use case, what's maybe it's a particular version of a platform or specific application they want to deploy, and then based on the best practices that is built into the system, we prepare the infrastructure, we assess it, and we deploy it to achieve the actual business outcome. And as I mentioned, this is entirely built on Dell Technologies. Gives us huge advantage in that we control and interact with all those elements, whether it's PowerMax storage, whether it's Power Edge server. So nobody knows how to run Dell products better than us. So this solution is much better than a multi-vendor scenario. So the ultimate goal is to deliver a platform that is able to generate business outcomes specifically around vSphere. That's the primary goal here. Before I jump into the actual demo, the last slide here. So we assess the inventory, we assess the state of everything that's inside Power1, all the components, and it's this context that allows us to make the right decision about which automation to run next. So this state is not just the configuration, by the way. It's things like physical connectivity to devices, connectivity to all ports, all things like that are being monitored by Power1. And based on all those factors, we can make intelligent decisions about how we arrive to the customer outcomes. So I tried to, I wanted initially to show it to you, but instead I recorded a demo of me doing the unboxing experience. So unboxing experience in Power1 is called Launch Assist. And I'm gonna start it right here. So that's what your customer will see once they receive the box and power it on and connect the laptop to it. So even though that's a UI, it's important to understand that everything you see here, all those things, the EULA acceptance and all that, it's built on top of Power1 API. And there are several steps to go through. The interesting thing is when you are doing this demo to the actual customer, on the customer side, systems engineer can go through that demo and collect all the information. You can see I'm typing in. So that's things like networking and all the stuff. So the systems engineer can ask the customer for all that information, DNS, SNMP, network info, and when the actual solution is installed, we'll provide a JSON file with those answers, and the system will simply deploy itself, so you won't have to fill all those things out manually, right? So your customer won't even have to type anything. So I enter DNS info, management networking connectivity right now, and at each step, what Power1 controller does, it will discover all the physical resources. I'm sorry, it will discover the Power1, and it will use all that information that I provided to configure that to install vSphere and all the other components. So you can see just how much time is saved by doing all those steps manually, right? VX block used to be our best in the industry solution. So with VX block, it takes about 2-3 days, in the factory to do the logical build, and probably another 2-3 days of configuration customer side. With Power1 real life, it will take about 2-3 hours. Okay, so just on unboxing, you save a lot of time and frustration. And if you compare this with things like do it yourself, so if a customer tries to recreate this environment using their own choice of components without automation, it can easily take several weeks here. Okay, so it really saves time just on that step. It goes through all those steps. So now it's collecting information about system fabric. And the last step, so I'll probably just speed up a bit. So the last step would be to deploy the management cluster, which is the actual Power1 software that manages the system. So that's the actual secret sauce behind the Power1 automation, the Power1 controller. And once it is done, once the management controller is installed, the unboxing experience is complete. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the demo. But now I wanted to actually switch to the UI. So that's what your customer will see when the deployment is complete. So that's the Power1 Navigator UI. And again, I explained that the UI is there just for now, so for humans to drive the IT infrastructure. In the future, and we expect it to be that way, we expect the infrastructure to be driven by things like ticket management systems. So in the future, everything will be managed by the APIs. But we understand that right now, most of our customers are not ready. So we definitely provide a full UI to manage this solution. And without further ado, I'll just go to a page called CRG. So that's that logical collection of physical hardware that I explained at the previous slides. And I'm just gonna go ahead and try to create a cluster resource group. So I'm gonna name it channel juice. And the things that I do here, I can just select what vSphere version I want to install, okay? And those are the templates. That's its default template and what I have been doing before, so don't worry about that. I'm gonna click next. So now what you see here, you see available resource pools. And resource pools is another word for physical hardware that the Power One management controller currently sees. So I'm gonna go ahead with the resource pool that has 4 available servers with 24 available terabytes. And you see the details of the hardware underneath it. So I'm gonna create a cluster resource group with 3 servers and 4 terabytes of storage with disabled data reduction. So click next. It's gonna suggest what servers would be better out of that physical resource pool, what servers would be better to place that logical group onto. Click next. Select volume size for storage and confirmation of all steps before. I click create. And I can see that CRG job has been submitted. And I can look here. Okay, so guys, this is a mock-up demo. It's not a real system, so something might not work. But actually what's going on right now underneath is that Power One management controller will do everything by itself. So it allocate the correct amount of storage. It will do the SAN zoning. It will assign the servers. So you can see my create cluster job that I have previously submitted has been complete. So that's just as simple as it could be, right? And if I go to the CRGs, now I have my channel juice CRG, so I can see what's inside it, right? So I can see all the servers and all the storage that is assigned. But if I want, let's say, to expand it, I can go here and I can upgrade the number of servers. And again, it knows that that's the only server that is available is only 1 server that is left. So it tells me that 4 maximum could be in this CRG. So I'm gonna hit next. I'm gonna assign 16 terabytes of storage. Why does it? Okay, 4 terabytes of storage. I'm gonna click next and I click commit. And again, this job has been submitted and I can see the progress of the job here. So modify the cluster, and currently it's doing its stuff, right? So it checks if everything is okay. So we have enough capacity, and it does all the changes by itself. How cool is that, right? So and that's pretty much it. So you don't have much to configure. You see your inventory tab. That's pretty much what Power One controller sees inside the box. You see the actual platform, and that's your management cluster, and that's your production cluster. So management cluster is the cluster that runs the Power One intelligence, and the production cluster is the vCenter that actually runs user VMs. And from there, you can just simply go ahead and click update your vSphere. So once the new sphere version, a new vSphere version is released, it's just simple as that. You click here and you do upgrade platform button, and everything is done by itself. So you don't even have to do anything inside vCenter. All right. So as simple as that, you can scale up and down your CRGs. There is nothing to. There are no settings here actually. So if you browse through the tabs, everything is so much automated that you don't have a lot of the choices. And that's why I like doing those demos, because they are very short. There is nothing to actually show except the beautiful automation that is going on behind the screen. And again, I want to highlight this fact again. This UI is here for the current state of things. We realize that majority of our customers are not ready to for their IT to be driven by artificial intelligence. We realize that we will still prefer to use the UI, and that's why we created this UI. But UI is just sits on top of the actual management API, the one that we are going to use in the future. And with that, that's pretty much the end of my presentation.
Awesome. Ivan, that was great. I thought that a couple things stood out to me. One, I'm just amazed. So VxRail HCI has just taken off for us at Dell Technologies, and the amount of units sold and the amount of happy customers we have out there. And what I really took away from this is that Power One is truly autonomous and is even more automated. It's going to give customers a more automated experience than even VxRail will, which is, I think, just a continuous game changer out there. And then one thing that did come in that I wanted to highlight is that usually we don't do demos and UIs in these Channel Juice Thursdays, but I thought it was important when Ivan and I were prepping for this, because he was able to set this up in 5 minutes, right? So the unboxing to set up was a 5-minute process, and then took you through the whole UI in 5 minutes. And the UI is not even needed because of the level of automation, but it's still like allowing customers to shift gears, even though you can still put the car in automatic drive. And then I wanted to bring in some questions from the chat for Ivan. First question coming in was, will this overlap or compete with VCE products? And the second part of that, Ivan, is, are you planning to support more storage apart from PowerMax? For example, Unity XT, etc. So I know you touched on a little bit. Can you expand?
Sure. So this is not to compete with VxBlocks. It's to complement VxBlocks. So right now, our strategy for VxBlock to position to the customers who needs an outcome for a specific application, let's say SAP, right? So I don't think there is a better play for things like SAP or maybe some specialized oil and gas applications like Halliburton. It's certified to work with VxBlock. So we reserve VxBlocks for things like specialized use cases for a specific business unit or a specific organization. This is going to be our flagship product when it comes to automation. So you saw how much simpler it is to manage. So that's definitely the future of not just Dell Technologies when it comes to the IT infrastructure. That's the future of where IT is going. You can go to Gartner, and you can see Gartner is all about automation right now, because it's just in the beginning of Gartner hype cycle, as they call it, right? So just picking up. So you're going to see more and more announcements on Power One in the future. And answering the second part of this question, yes. So initially we decided to roll it out with the enterprise products, but mid-range next and Unity are going to be, I'm not sure actually about Unity, but mid-range next will be actually added to Power One as one of the allowed components for sure. And in the future, we're going to expand it to the whole portfolio. So the real goal here is not the hardware, it's the actual intelligence, it's the actual Power One controller that drives that artificial intelligence, which is basically the main idea of automation.
Awesome. Thank you, Ivan. So yeah, so we're coming up on 11:30. I wanted to remind everyone, keep an eye out on their emails for the bonus questions. And then please, there'll be a link to register in that email for next week's session as well. That's going to be focused on continuity, cost reduction, critical capabilities with empowering the remote workforce, which is a big deal right now. A lot of customers reaching out to you guys as partners, to us as Dell Technologies, to help with that. And then last thing I wanted to say is that if you're a partner here in Southern California or in Hawaii, Las Vegas, and you're not either working with Ivan or Rick, then you're really missing out. They are truly two of the best that we have in the company. We're lucky to have them in Southern California. So I appreciate the support that you guys do, Ivan and Rick, and supporting the channel from a technical perspective here in SoCal. And Yvonne, unless I missed anything or if anybody has any questions, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think there is one more question
Yes,
about
Kyle.
licensing.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead, Yvonne. It's like you see it. Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So, yeah, customers are definitely able to use their existing ELAs. I cannot answer the question about licenses, like are they attached? I don't think they're attached, but you can quote it in the same quoting path when you quote Power1. So we have several ways you can source VMware license. One of the ways you can source it through your existing relationship with VMware. Another way you can source it through Dell EMC directly when you quote Power1. But yeah, there is definitely a special provision for customers with existing TLAs and DLAs. That's definitely pretty much all target customers have ELAs right now if they consider in Power1.
Yeah, I just want to make sure because I know at one point there was an issue where we're buying VMware licenses attached to an appliance, and so I just want to make sure that we could separate. And then there was what that path looked like from a sourcing perspective, whether it goes through Dell Technologies or it went through VMware. So you answered exactly what I was looking for. Thank you.
You guys bring up a good point. The sales motion in this and the successful campaigns that we've had with the autonomous infrastructure and Power1 have always been in conjunction, not just Dell Technologies, not just the channel partner, but also VMware. So it's a joint go-to-market, and that's really where we see the higher win rates. So. Did I miss any other questions? All right. I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys for turning in to this week's episode, and keep an eye out for the bonus questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.